All right, everyone, welcome to the Dancers Beat. I'm your host, Brett Davenport. We have a very exciting episode this week. We're going to take an inside look at the world of the Universal Ballet competition, and we're going to talk to one of my favorite people that I get to work with on the UBC dance tour, Mr. Etienne Diaz. He is the director of the Rock School for Dance Education. He comes from Cuba. He's an outstanding dancer with an outstanding school, and I'm very much looking forward to talking to you, Etienne. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Very excited to have you. So I just wanted to get started talking about you and your dance career at the from the earliest the stages of your dance career. So you grew up in Cuba, and so what were your earliest influences? What kind of got you started in dance? What inspired you to first get started in dance?
Thank you, Brett. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be in the podcast. I love the UBC family and I love the competition. Uh, Ballet has always been in my family, and is in Cuba. Ballet is such a big part of the culture, and the theaters in Cuba are beautiful. I grew up watching dance in the national, watching the National Ballet of Cuba, who was at the time was the director was the famous, renowned Alicia Alonso, and my sister is studying in the school. She started very early. We will go to all the shows. So ballet started with my sister joining the school. She's older than me, and then after that, she got my brother involved. And it's a funny story because the way that she spotted my brother, he was playing one time with his toys, and then she saw him in like in an over split, really open leg turnout as he was playing, and she's like, "You have a gift, my friend. You gotta come in." And that's how the whole sister gets brother in. He was the middle brother, and that's how that took off. I left Cuba when I was 7. So
Okay.
even though Zoika, my sister, was studying ballet, and well into the beginning of her career in Cuba, my brother was still studying the school. But my mom, my brother, and I left Cuba, and we moved to Brazil. And my brother was able to continue his training, but he most of his training was received in Cuba. That's why my brother had an outstanding technique, and was so talented, in Zoica as well, my sister. And I we went to Brazil, so that's where we went. And I obviously the culture in Brazil was soccer, so I started playing soccer and did not want to be involved with dance much. I would watch them, but I wanted to be a soccer player at the time. So it wasn't until I came to America and I moved to Orlando, Florida. At the time, my sister and brother were both dancing with the Orlando Ballet under the direction of the famous dancer, Cuban American dancer Fernando Bujones, who was a star. I mean, a very unique technical dancer who was the first American to win the Varna competition, and they were very lucky to be training under his direction in Orlando. And that's when I started ballet. At the age of
Okay.
14, I was already in America. I came into high school. Life was very different, and then my sister finally got me in. So that's how
Okay.
I came. And at the time, I was under the school director was Peter Stark, who is currently my boss. He's the president of the Rock School, and an amazing mentor, and coach. I always tell Peter he's the best boss I ever had.
Nice.
He's just a guide, and just very understanding. And as I transitioned from a dancer into my role as director, it was a learning curve, obviously, and he helped me so much with understanding what it takes to be in this field, right? Which is a lot. So
Um,
that's how. Go ahead.
no, well, I don't mean to interrupt, but you said something interesting. You said something about your brother had extraordinary technique because he was still training in Cuba. What is it about the training in Cuba that created such like great technique, and how would you compare that to perhaps training that you saw for young dancers in the United States?
I think both countries offer phenomenal training. The difference is that in Cuba, with the regime favor dance so much, and that's why so many athletes in Cuba in sports and in dance do the sports and actually get involved is in a way, and in a sad way, should affect the country, right? Because the conditions are not, for many, are not ideal. So they get into sports and they want to get into baseball or dance in an opportunity to travel. But the government always favored ballet, and it was very well funded. So no ballet dancer in Cuba pays for classes, and everything is
Okay.
completely free. And with that, they're able to offer this. They created this amazing school that have in its early stages had a Vaganova influence, but they were able from there with a little bit of the French methodology, they were able to build their own uh, curriculum, and which is an amazing school. But I think where they thrive is that in Cuba, like in many other countries that have a strong school, they're able to give the students few or even at times only one teacher. So in a way, you have one teacher for the most of the early part of your training. And that consistency, I think that creates a really strong dancer, or at least a very strong foundation. So when other teachers start to work with you, you already have a solid foundation where they can build up on
Okay.
top of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So, because of the importance that the government placed on ballet, it offered people an opportunity that you may not have had in other fields that you would get into. So it makes sense that the dance there would be at a higher level because of the stakes are so much higher. It's a way to see the world. It's a way to potentially get out.
Right, yeah, and on top of that, they every year there's a big audition, a national audition. The National Ballet School is a, if you ever get a chance to go, it's absolutely beautiful. I haven't been back in Cuba in many years, and I really want to go back because every time that you go into the school and those hallways, it's just the history is unbelievable. But they're able to do a national audition, and then they have selected spots. They have few spots, and they get to pick from a big pool of dancers, and they're looking at different things that are necessary to be successful in this field. With the world changing, and now there is different body types and different types of dancer, which is a wonderful thing. Little by little, the dancers are changing, and it's a great thing. But in the past, was much more strict,
Hmm.
right? So, so that's another aspect that helps schools like that be so successful. They get to pick 20 or 30 girls from hundreds.
Okay. And so from Cuba, your first experience with ballet in the United States was at Orlando Ballet, you said, right?
That is correct. Yeah, at the time, there were some Cuban dancers and teachers in the Orlando Ballet School, and when I started late. Obviously, I was able to train with them, and with Fernando Bujones running the company, I was very influenced, and I really wanted to get better quickly to hopefully join that company. It was a small company, but it was filled with amazing dancers from all over the world. And I remember dancers. There were dancers from Ukraine, from Japan, a couple Cubans. There were, yeah, it was a very strong company.
So, and you said your sister was there first, right? So,
Yeah, my sister was. Go ahead.
no, go, you go ahead. Go ahead.
My sister was dancing with the company at the time, and then my brother moved after we left from Cuba. He came from Brazil, and he
Okay.
moved to Orlando to dance with the Orlando Ballet as well. So he joined my sister in the company, and I came a couple years after with my mother, and that's when I started training in ballet.
So I imagine your sister being there first helped a little bit with the transition. I mean, that's a big transition to come from Cuba to the United States. It's, people speaking. Yeah, there's a Latin population in Orlando, obviously, but I'm sure there's a language change and there's a culture change. What was that kind of like going from Cuba, having part of your family with you? Your brother was still back in Brazil. Um, did dance kind of give you a way to kind of focus and anchor amidst? I imagine that had to be a little bit chaotic for you as a young person, with such a big change in life.
It was very difficult. Life in Brazil and in Cuba is very different. The community is different in a way. The language barrier was huge. I spoke no English. I had never even taken an English class in school. So coming in, the language barrier in a way that I feel that got me closer to dance because it was such an international place at the time, or the
Right.
Orlando Ballet, and I was able to communicate with a lot of people in Spanish and even in Portuguese. There were some Brazilians in the company and in the school, so that helped me without a doubt. And my sister, who she actually taught me my first ballet class ever, and my sister is a very strict teacher, and she's
Yeah.
wonderful. Right now, she works with the Washington Ballet, and she's doing phenomenal work. But at the time, it was very new, and I never even took it. Even though I had a brother and a sister that dance, I never took a ballet class. So the language, on top of that, I also went into high school, so it was very different. In a way, you felt lonely, right? And ballet gave me that sense of community, and gave me just a, a driving force for something for me to focus my energy
Yeah.
because everything was new. So I felt very lost at the time. I remember vividly that it was just so much going on, but for me personally, I was just trying to figure it out. But I was already 14, going into 15, so I needed something. I needed a passion.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're just in the same culture, in the same place, those years in life are challenging. They just are. You're developing, you're going through things physically, socially. It's difficult to fit in. So I imagine that must have been extra chaotic, and it is a good thing that you had an anchoring point like dance. I talked to Lisette and David. We did an episode of the podcast this past weekend, and one of the kind of the themes that developed is that like dance, the journey of dance kind of was this like focal point that gave them some sort of direction, and then their dance career took them in all different paths that they never knew it was going to take them on. And I'm sure when you started dancing, you you probably didn't have any idea of where it would take you, and it's taken you all over the world, right?
Exactly. It's unbelievable. And and on top of that, you meet people that you met in the beginning stages of your career, and then you meet them 20 years later, which for
Yeah.
me is one of my favorite things. Even judging with UBC, sometimes I will see a teacher in the hallways, and we look at each other like, oh my god, and we were
Yeah.
classmates, right?
Wow.
In Orlando, or when I went to a summer, or when I was dancing in Italy, or you're like, oh wait, or even in a gala. I mean, I would do like, as a professional dancer, I was lucky to here and there I would get a performance opportunity in a gala performance, and then I will meet dancers from other companies, and that was always I love doing that because you will learn so much just by seeing. But yeah, the path that a career like this takes you is completely unexpected, and it's wonderful at the same time. I never thought I was going to be dancing in Bucharest, in Romania,
Yeah.
as my first company. When I started training Orlando Ballet, I was like, oh, I'm going to get, maybe, hopefully, I'm going to get into Orlando Ballet and I'll be able to start little by little. I never danced in Orlando Ballet. I went to Romania as my
Yeah.
first company. Uh, it's like that, and you just kind of jump, and hope for the best, and you do meet amazing people along the way. This career is filled with passionate people, people that are very driven, because it's such a hard art form, right? It's a wonderful art form, but it's very hard. As you mentioned, as a teenager, you're going already at a personal level through a lot with the changes and the growth, and then on top of that, you're in front of a studio, in front of a mirror, looking at yourself, and it's hard because it's very exposing. And so I always say that if you're able to do that and go back to the studio, even when you don't win a medal, or even when you didn't have a good class or a good day the day before, and you still push forward, and put your best attitude for this teaches you so much resilience, problem solving, so many things. Yeah, and I think that I needed that at that age, and I think it really gave it to me. and like I said, it's truly amazing. It's completely unexpected, the places that you end up.
Yeah, I mean, in this podcast, I always come to this point generally where I talk to people about I started as an actor, and I kind of just fell into this line of work hosting dance competitions. But I am always marveled. I always marvel at the discipline that the dancers have, and it's something that I kind of wish now looking back that I had gotten into dance because the not only do you have a discipline in the sense that like you have to learn an art form and you have to learn how to connect with an audience and all that, but then on top of that, physically, dancers, you guys are basically like athletes. I mean, you know, the things that you have to do with your body, you're constantly training your body and pushing it well beyond the limits that the average pushes their body through, and it's you know, you do use your body as an actor and stuff like that, but it's not to the degree that a dancer does, where a dancer is, like I said, your art form is a part athlete and part, you know, actor and artist. And I'm always so impressed by the discipline that the dancers have, and I can see why that leads to success in other areas of life, you know.
You could have said any better. I That's what and I always talk to my dancers about that. And Peter is a perfect example. You are In order to be a dancer, you also have to be an actor or an actress.
Yeah,
It's part of it. You're telling a story, storytelling, but at the same time, you have to have the precision of a gymnast, right?
right.
But the gymnast can get away with landing the step and very focused and just focus on the technicality, and an actor has only to focus about the body movement and the faces and the script. But we have to do all that plus making sure the technique is
Yeah,
perfect. So that's what makes it very hard. And so you're absolutely correct that it is very hard to, especially growing up, to put together the steps, think of the corrections that the teachers are giving you, while also telling a story, and that story can be completely different, and it can completely differ from your character, right? I might be I might have to portray a very um, an evil person, and then that you might be sweet and you might be very shy, and it's hard to put it forward, but it's part of it.
yeah.
It's really part of it. Yeah.
So how would you say your background and your early experiences coming from Cuba, having to, uh, you know, go through such a transition into the United States, dancing there, how how do you think that influences the way you teach, the way you judge, the way you run your studio, and everything today?
That's a great question. I was lucky enough. The companies that I dance, they were all very different. The first company, obviously, as I mentioned, was the National Ballet of Bucharest, which at the time was the director was Aline Georgil, and we also worked a little bit with Alina Kokaru, who was a principal in the Royal Ballet. She was Romanian, and she would come and perform with the company. But there was also very Vaganova teachers. When I went from there, from Romania, I went to Italy. I worked with Freddy Franzuti, who had had a company. Who He was mostly a director choreographer, so he was ballet very mixed in with theater and acting. So I really had to be very strong technician, but also able to do a good storytelling. In Milwaukee Ballet was the same with Michael Pink, who has been in Milwaukee Ballet for many years, a wonderful director, and he's all his ballets. Dancing is important, but telling the story and how the pantomimes um, uh, shape the ballet are so important. I remember Michael Pink would give each dancer, even in the back of the core, a little note, a little piece of paper with what story was going on in their own mind. So it's like when you watch a movie, right? There, let's say that Tom Cruise is interacting with the other main actor, but in the back, there's things that are happening. That's what makes a movie and filming great. But in ballet, Michael Pink has done a great job with all his ballets, because you will see the pas de deux happening, but instead of dancers just standing in the back and watching, there is a whole life going in the back,
Yeah, yeah,
and he creates that. Yeah, it's very interesting. And I worked with. that was my third company at the time, and I've seen a lot of ballets and I visited company, and very few directors have that capability. He does a wonderful job. And from Milwaukee, I was lucky enough with my wife Mayara to be able to get a company contract at the Pennsylvania Ballet, which was formerly known as the Pennsylvania Ballet. Now is the Philadelphia Ballet under the direction of Angel Corella. And Angel, for those of you who know him, he was a star dancer in the American Ballet Theater in New York. For his bravura, he was a technician, but also an amazing actor. And the way that he expressed while dancing was for me outstanding. He was a phenomenal dancer, but as an artist, he was even better artist. He was a star dancer of his time, and I was able to work with him in Philadelphia. So all of that, I think, really helped me in in implement artistry at a very early age during my teaching, right, during my
Mhm.
as I in my curriculum. With I think it's important even at competitions. I When I'm judging and I'm talking, which is I always talk about that. A great technician, work on your artistry, learn a little bit about the story of the variation of or the ballet. So I think that would enhance your dancing overall. Um, that's what I would say. I think that's definitely shaped me. Everywhere I go, everybody had a different approach technique, but artistry in a professional field remains the constant.
Yeah, that exercise you were talking about having a story. That there's like I had an acting teacher, a film teacher, who said that anytime your face is on camera, have some sort of story going on in your head. Have some thoughts about what's going on, because you don't want the camera to pan to you, and the camera can see, like, if you're just standing there with no thoughts going on, you're brain dead. The camera will pick that up. You bring up an interesting point about judging and artistry. How do you weigh when you're judging the value of the story being told and how well the dancer is connecting to the story and technique? Because as kind of a layman who has only learned dance through being a host, I I will notice that the dances, because I'm there all day, announcing the dances, but the dances that really catch my attention is when I can tell that the dancer is emotionally invested and connected to the story they're telling. I can sort of tell when someone has good technique, but not really. So, as you, who has an expertise in both technique and storytelling, do those things have equal importance to you when you're judging? Does one kind of catch your attention more than the other? How do you weigh that when you're judging?
Wonderful question, and absolutely yes. Equal, yeah, they're both equally as important. Um, as I mentioned before, I don't think you can succeed in this field without artistry. I think at some point, and obviously there is different directors and different teachers that might be more acceptable about the artistry. But eventually, if you want to get the part and if you want to do well, you want to be a principal. There, you have to be a good artist. So when I'm judging, it is the first thing I look at. I remember when you're, and I always talk about this, when you walk in, that's the first thing we see without even the music, or a few variations you start after the music, but most of them you come in and you preset, and that is already equally as important. um, so for all the dancers out there, I think learning about the variation and the ballet that you're doing, I think it's something that is within your is the one thing that you can affect. Some of us are not born tall enough. We don't have the perfect body. We don't have the perfect feet. Some of us have this. Some of us we don't have that. But the one thing that you can work on and and always and be a constant is in your artistry, right?
Yeah,
Because it's our face. So you can look at the mirror and you, and you can learn it. And it's a learned skill. Some people have a natural. Some people don't. So you can get better at it. But a lot of times we focus on things that we cannot change, right?
right.
I'm, you know me. I'm a short. I'm a short. person. And there are some things about, if I would have focused my entire career on, I would never be able to change that. I was
Right.
able to move past it and do the best that I had with what I had, right? And I think that sometimes as dancers, it's such a hard thing to just accept it and then shift gears and works on something that you can really improve. Whereas is you're an amazing um, lyrical and soft dancer, but in order to get parts in a more dynamic role, you need to change your approach. And then if you know that you're the dancer, then work. Maybe you take a class a little bit more lyrical and more soft. But then tomorrow's class, you approach it with more bravura and dynamic, and that will open up a variety of different roles that you could
Yeah.
do, right? That so you don't become limited. And a lot of times we think we're limited because of our physical capabilities, but some most of the time I would say, and I may be wrong, but I think most of the time is because of just our way of being, right? We in a way incorporate. I'm a soft dancer. I'm a dynamic dancer, and that's what I'm good at. And I think we can all be like, no, okay, I can do that well. Let me focus on maybe being a slower dancer, so that open up new possibilities in roles.
Yeah, I think what you said there is very helpful for a young dancer to know. I mean, especially as a young person, we all go through body images and we all look at someone who maybe is more muscular or taller or whatever and say, "Oh, if I only was that way." But the truth is that anybody who goes to the theater or watches a live performance, sure, that can catch your eye if someone's aesthetically pleasing or tall or whatever. But what really grabs someone is the emotionality of something and the story being told and the kind of the stagecraft and the showmanship really is what is really connecting with people. And I think that's an important thing for a young dancer to know from someone like you is that don't focus on the things that you can't change. And that's a great metaphor for life. I mean, you can't make yourself taller. Apparently there's surgeries now. I guess you can go somewhere and try, but they're very expensive and painful from what I've heard. But you can't make yourself taller. You can't change your body really that much, but you can focus on the storytelling and developing emotionally and having a more a broader scope through which you see the world, which will help you connect with more and more audiences, and that's really what grabs people. So I think that's like really helpful for someone to know who's like a young dancer. So how then did your whole journey take you to UBC? How did you get started with UBC? And did you judge other competitions before? And if so, how would you kind of compare your experiences to UBC?
Great. I My first interaction was with UBC. I was invited by Lisette to perform at one of the locations.
Okay.
I believe that it was in upstate Pennsylvania, but university at the University of Pennsylvania, as a matter of fact. And then both Maya and I performed there, and that's the first time that we met Lisette. At the time, I was still dancing, and I had judged another competition that was smaller, but in reality, before UBC, I didn't have much um, experience in competitions. And because I started late, I didn't do competitions at all.
Oh,
I just focused on training, and it's something that at UBC we do. All the judges talk about this. Competition is great, but the magic happens in the studio, and that's where you get better. So don't give up your training just for to do a million competitions.
right.
Competitions are phenomenal, but in a way to put your training to a test. So don't ever lose that. And I think we all talk about it. But what I liked about UBC, as soon as after I retired and started working with the rock at the rock school, Lisa reach out, and then I became in a more consistent basis judging with UBC. What I think that UBC offered that's great is the master classes at every event are very helpful. I think that they allow dancers to get the nerves out, and meeting the judges that early morning before they compete, it just puts them in a different uh, uh, um, um, in a different vibe. I think they
Yeah.
just feel more comfortable and they're able to go to the stage feeling better and more prepared. I think the master classes are definitely key and make it very unique. I also think that the variety in judges from different backgrounds, different schools, make the competition great.
Yeah.
I really do think. And for those of you who know Lisette, she's just a very passionate. Her heart is on
Yeah.
this business, and she knows each one of the dancers. She and the schools, and she's just a very nice person. And I think in this field, um, you need to be great at what you do, but most importantly, you just have to be a good person.
Yeah.
And she is, and her whole team is. When we're working with everybody backstage, everybody, it's just wonderful. Yeah, they're good
Yeah.
human beings. So
I think one of the things about Lisette and David is that because they are such wonderful people, they attract such wonderful people into the company. And all the people that we get to work with, the judges, I mean, after the competitions, we spend time together, we go to dinners together, we enjoy each other's company. I mean, I always look forward to seeing you, when we're, we get together and talk sports and stuff like that, and we talk about the competitions. And I think it's because of the example that they set that everyone there's such a wonderful vibe. And I think what you were saying is important for the dancers to know is that at the master classes, you judges are weighing that very heavily too when you're like, for say, scholarships. Like, it's not just about the competition. It's not just about that minute and a half or 2 minutes where you're doing your variation and all the pressures on you. You're also correct. I mean, you're also taking into account, how did this person show up in class? What was their work ethic like in class, right?
without a doubt, absolutely, I think the and I always talk about that to students. I ask them every time I'm teaching a master class. I ask the questions: what when you are ready to go to a company, where do you audition?
Mm,
How do you get hired into this? And they think about it for a second, and they're like, a class. I'm like, yeah, in an audition
yeah.
class, you go and you visit the company and you take company class. So directors are hiring, and when I'm sitting there with Evelyn Cisnero from Ballet West or from different directors from different schools, we're looking at the ability of the dancer to take class. That's why I always tell them, be a good class taker because that will get you jobs,
Yeah.
right? So the importance of the class is great because we're seeing them on stage, so we're seeing, okay, that dancer has they don't get afraid when they go on the stage. They really go for it. That's wonderful. That's part of it, right? The class is also showing the dancers ability to be adaptable. So if this director wants the hands slightly higher or slightly lower, or you're turning from a more straight back leg than from a fourth position. So from different ways, you're more adaptable. You're ready for change. You're open to new ideas. And I think ultimately that's what gets you the job, right? And another metaphor that I always use is like a painter. When a painter he's going to want to create a painting, he's going to buy a white canvas, not a canvas that's already painted. So then
Right.
he can paint on and create his own artistic vision and put that forward. The same works with directors. They want dancers that have a good foundation, that have a personality, that know how to approach work, but most importantly, that they're open to new ideas. So then their ballet can be shifted towards whatever artistic vision they have.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Lisette has told me an interesting story, and she's told on the podcast this past weekend, is that she was at the Prix de Lucerne, and she didn't win the competition. I don't know what but she didn't win. She didn't like place that high or whatever. But Robert Joffrey saw her and saw something in her that made he said, you have something, and I wanna work with what you with you, so I think it's important because everybody wants to win, of course, but and it is, of course, it's a competition and there's a hierarchy and it's nice to win, but I think it's important, and I think you and the other judges I've talked to, is that just because you don't win the competition doesn't mean that one of you aren't going to see something in someone that says, hey, I think that person has something that can be developed. And I think, like you were saying, being a blank canvas and showing that you're moldable and adaptable is just as important, if not more important, than winning a competition.
Without a doubt. I was I was there. You brought up the Prix de Lausanne. I was there last year. I was representing the rock school with three dancers, and the all the dancers that got in were outstanding. It's a wonderfully run competition. The talent is superb. Um, but what they all have in common, and especially, and none of our students they've got in, which is amazing, but they didn't pass to the final round, right? Similarly to the set. But regardless, just the amount of classes that they did there, the amount of coaching, like we do at UBC, I think that the growth that you saw and I see it at UBC as well in one weekend. There was a little bit longer because it was just more dancers, but it's unbelievable. And you see dancers from different schools, and but most importantly, the dancers that are doing well, the artistic, it really shows. It really does show that their coaches have developed the artistic part of the variation. So I tell all the coaches, all the directors there, invest time with your dancer, just talking about the variation, the role, the actual role that you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think, um, you know, I think the good thing about the master classes, like you were saying, is that you kind of get to set a tone with them before the competition starts. So they don't just see you behind the judges table for the first time, stoically judging them. You've already gotten a chance to interact with them. You've already gotten a chance to get to know them a little bit. So by the time they get on stage, you have a little bit of a rapport with them. And what another theme that I've noticed that's developed throughout this is that from Lisette at the top through all the judges, everybody is there rooting for the dancers. Like everybody wants the best for them, and I think you guys all do a really good job of showing them that. Yeah, and I think that's important
Thank you.
for them to know.
I agree. I think that we all want you to have a good show. It's easier for us to judge because then we can give you feedback on the things that you need to improve, to polish here and there. But we want you to have a good show, a good job. Um, and I think that the classes help us see, like you said, we get closer to the dancer, and it just takes some of the pressure off of the dancer, right? I
Yeah,
think you see them a lot more comfortable at UBC, and we see a lot of amazing performers at UBC. I think it helps. The class on stage is also very key, right? Because it's different if you have a class. Most, in a different building, and then you come into the theater to perform. But most of the time, we have a master class on stage, which I think is first is wonderful as a student to take a class in a beautiful stage, and
yeah,
then second they get to issue the floor, they get to issue the is it more slippery, is it a little more sticky, what can I think that is a great offering.
yeah. So you kind of touched on it a little bit, but when you're giving out scholarships to say the rock school, what are you kind of looking for? What are you kind of weighing in terms of the competition, the classes? It sounds like you kind of said that the classes are actually, when you're giving out scholarships, maybe even more important than just the 2 minutes that you're performing. What's your kind of internal process when you're giving out scholarships?
I think one of the first is does what the technique that I'm seeing on that dancer in particular, does it match our curriculum? Is it
Mm,
going to be a good match? Because the one thing that I don't want is a dancer to come into the school and then we're teaching in a way that is when they go back home is completely different than what they're going to be learning in the fall.
yeah,
Does that make sense? So
yeah,
because I want to build on what their teachers have been working on all the year prior. So when they can come in, we can really focus on that technique that has already been established and then just improve a couple of things here and there. um, so I think I looked at technically the styles of teaching match. I can see from a variation or in a class you were taught in a certain way, yes, yeah, I think you're a good match to come to our school. We won't change the way your arm is. We won't tell
Hmm.
you, oh no, the arm is higher, and you know, we'll teach. Our teaching styles are aligned. And then second, I think is age is important, but I think when it comes to leveling is just very hard. So I looked at the dancer where they are, and I look at our curriculum is by this age we're doing certain things. So I think if I'm looking at a dancer that is outstanding, but they're 11 years old and they're getting started on point, they still are not able to do a fully a point class, but I know that in the summer they're gonna have to take 5 hours of point a week. Like every day they're gonna have a point class. I know it's gonna be a push, right? And that doesn't mean that that dancer is behind. It's just that their school is taking them at a different pace.
Right.
Some dancers I know that they went on point at 12 and they're amazing. And they had a great career. Actually, as a matter of fact, I have a dancer when I took the job. Um, she was not ready for points. She has those feet that are just very flexible, and you have to be very careful because then they can injure themselves, and
Right.
they need to develop a strength, um, very good strength before going on point. And we actually ended up putting her on point at 12, which is later than what we normally do. I would say more 10, 11, around that age. But we pretty much made her do her level a whole another year. Moving forward today, she's 13 years old and she's terrific. I mean, she's unbelievable. She's doing everything on point in 1 year. She's doing full variations on point. And she's great and she's doing really well at competitions. But all we did was just wait a year. So I think that's what I look at a dancer for your age. How do you match what we're gonna be doing in their summer? Does that make sense? You might
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
outstanding at 13, but you're more ahead than what we're doing, because so I don't want you to come in and be bored because
Right.
of and, and a rock is a mix of level and age as well, right? Knowledge, but we try for the most part to have like an age range, right?
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
developmentally there's might be the kids are different at different ages. So but I think the biggest thing is that how does your style at home matches our style.
Okay. So that's interesting. And so you're maybe that's good for a dancer to know that maybe wants to get a scholarship to a particular place. Maybe if it didn't happen, it's not because that the director or whoever's giving out the scholarship doesn't see talent in you or see value in you. It's just that stylistically you're just not a right fit at that time for that school. But that's okay because that means that you that leads you to where you're kind of supposed to be stylistically.
Correct, and even within our dancers, a lot of our professional division, which is our day program, that they board here, they live here year round. Um, Usually, a couple months before summer, they come to us and they ask, "Hey, what schools do you recommend that we audition?" And even within our own students, that list changes for each one of them,
Yeah.
because we have the knowledge and the team that we're able to say, you I can see why a school like Miami City Ballet or New York City or SAB, you have a little bit of a balancing style. You should go there. I think you're gonna do well. Maybe you should strengthen different things. So maybe you can go to the school. Maybe so we kind of guide them in different directions depending on their style and their look. We do that a lot. We work very closely with the dancers to guide them. Um, So absolutely correct. It doesn't mean that you're not qualified when you don't get into the program that you want. It only means that at that time, based on where you are, is not a match for maybe with their style, right? They're looking for just a different just style. That's all it is.
Yeah. So let's so like then professionally with say a dancer is does want a professional career. What would your advice be as someone who has had a professional career in terms of, we a lot of people we set out a roadmap for like what we would like to achieve, where we would like to go. But I have found, and I think most people will find who have had some sort of career in the arts, is that your journey kind of takes you where it takes you. It's not necessarily where you want to, or what you think is best for you may not be best for you. So maybe just to give people, dancers who are thinking about a professional career, what is like a good mindset maybe to have in terms of that, and maybe some advice as someone who has had an illustrious dance career. What is some advice that you would give them in terms of how to reframe that in their mind, maybe?
That's a great question. I think that once you're a serious student, that you're in a school, that you're able to get all your technique, all of that, once you're already comfortable and you already have understanding your body, it start to try different classes and different styles, because that will open, you know, your, as I think I mentioned it before, your, it's like casting a white net, right? Instead of when you go fishing or casting a small
Hmm.
net. When you get exposure to different techniques and different variances on styles, you open the door to a lot of different companies. And this is a very hard art form. And a lot of times you might be a perfect match for a company, but they may not have a spot,
Yeah.
right? And then you have to wait another year. So do you want to wait a year? Um, it, nowhere. You want to wait at least in a year at a company where you get in training, you're dancing, and then maybe a year or two later you go and try back again when they announce that they need dancers, right? And then boom, here you landed an amazing job, you know. But I think that a lot of times, when I did it too, I would say, oh, I want to audition for this and this companies. I think my recommendation is look at those dancers, look at yourself, have a realistic look on how do you match the style of that company. Do you see yourself in that company? And that takes research. A lot of my seniors, when we're doing the list of companies that they will audition, or second company auditions, I told them, do research. I want you to come to me and tell me, oh, I'm looking at Colorado Ballet or Washington Ballet, and I think based on what the company's doing, the rep, I think I'm a good match, and that's what we're trying to do. um, so prepare yourself. Once you have a solid established technique, start to take different classes. If you're in New York visiting, go and take a class at Steps or anywhere where the teacher is going to be, have a different style than your home teacher. It's just good to get exposure, so when you go to that audition, you don't see those steps or that arm movement for the first time ever. It's not a, it's not a surprise.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
Um,
my, I think that's my biggest. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, that's great. And like you said, I mean, you're it's better to kind of diversify your talents, your artistry, and not be so regimented on like I have to be here or I have to be here, because that just might not be the best fit for you. So we'll kind of get wrap this up, but it's do you ever think about like, first of all, you're the director of the Rock School, which is in Philadelphia, right? Do you ever think like about what you're doing now? We're going to be going to Shanghai in in a month or so. Um, do you ever find yourself like looking back on where you came from and think to yourself, "Wow, how did I end up here?" Or has that happened in your career where you've found yourself in another country performing in some beautiful place and thought, "Wow, dance took me from where I started in life to Switzerland or Bucharest or wherever."
Without a doubt, I do every day. There is amazing people, amazing dancers out there that that a lot of times don't have a job, and they're still looking for a job. There's amazing dancers that retire and they don't get the opportunities that I did, and I'm constantly grateful. I think that you know the saying, being in the right place at the right time. I think with this field, you prepare yourself and you're good, but even with that, you still have to have a little bit of luck and good people, going back to Lisette and Lucas, good people that are willing to help the next generation. And that's why I value this company. I am extremely grateful because in the companies that I were, the directors were able to look at me as an individual and give me the parts that they thought they could give me, and they really tried their best to cast me. And I did a lot of principal parts. with limit, and we all have limitations, but with my limitations, I was able to get a lot of good parts and get a lot of good opportunities. So I'm extremely grateful. And to your point, sometimes I don't believe when I'm traveling and I'm judging, I'm doing masterclass. I'm like, oh my God, I remember 5 years ago, I was thinking about what am I going to do when I retire? And here I am, like I have 20, 10 years old around me, surrounding me, looking at me like, give me the best correction. And it's a wonderful feeling, because it's knowing that you're helping shape the next generation and you're making them better than what you were. And it's just it's a gift.
Yeah.
It really is a gift. And I'm very, very, every day I'm grateful. And for all those dancers out there that are still waiting to get a job, or they're thinking of retiring, but they have not found their path yet, keep going. It will come. It really does come. It just it takes time and persistence, I think. And I didn't get my first job until I was 21 years old.
Hmm.
So and every day is like that. Don't give up. If you, like I said, going back to the artistry, if you have the passion and artistry and drive, it will come. You just gotta find the right place.
Yeah. So is that kind of, if you had some parting words that you would want to instill in a young dancer, that maybe even if in a way you would be giving its advice to like your younger self, would that basically be it?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of I get a lot of questions about, hey, how do I get better at turning? Because I didn't train in Cuba, but I was born in Cuba, and my wife is a very good turner. So we get questions all the time. Oh, can you give me tips on turning? Can you give me tips on jump? And this is what I would say: if you want to turn, if you want to be better at turn. If you want to be better at jumps, jump. If you want to dance, dance.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I
just
think,
dance.
yeah, I think that's a great I think that's analogous to life, is that we do kind of overcomplicate things, especially artists who have ambition. It's easy to overthink things, but you at the end of the day, you can train and you can learn and you can study and do all these things, but at the end of the day, you just have to get out there and do it and be it, you know. So, all right, well, Etienne, I'm looking forward to seeing you in Shanghai. I'm very excited about that. And this has been great talking to you, man. I like I said, I always enjoy when you're one of the judges on. I love working with everybody, but I really enjoy, like, when you're around in the city and getting to hang out with you, and we talk about the gym at the hotel, and you know and talking about the Eagles or whatever sporting events going on. It's always like a lot of fun. So thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I think you had a lot
Thank
of
you.
great things to say.
Likewise. I mean, thank you. No, likewise. You're wonderful. I always enjoy seeing you. And Shanghai is great. It's very good food. It's a great place. I'm looking forward to showing you around.
Yeah, you're gonna have to show me around. This is my first time out there. Um, all right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been this week's episode of The Dancer's Beat. It's been an honor to talk with my guest, Etienne Diaz. I'm your host, Brett Davenport, and we will see you next time on The Dancer's Beat. Thank you, Etienne.
Thank you.